Hello and welcome back. No, I haven't fallen off the planet. I'm still here and very much grinding away behind the scenes. The channel has gone through several unique changes in terms of the software involved as I try to resolve some of my biggest problems. One of them being dates. I would have never have imagined that dates would actually have become my biggest nemesis. But in a way, it makes sense when you understand that the computer actually doesn't understand anything it spits out. It's a probability machine with numbers, and the understanding of a temporal resonance within that number system doesn't exist. So I literally have to build it myself. That's actually what we're going to talk about, the memory of AI. So let's start with something that's very basic and very important, but it has critical meaning to the entire discussion. And that is every AI model has a memory window, or what is often called a context size. That context size can be anywhere from 4K to 128K. The more modern and advanced models can even go up to 1 megabyte of internal memory. That's wonderful. It's great, and it offers a lot of opportunity within the framework of what we are discussing. But the problem with this is, the larger the context window, the more the model costs. And large context windows are very expensive. By utilizing what the model itself has from memory more efficiently, more like a human memory, we can cut those costs down. And more importantly, we can cut the amount of power down needed for that model. The more information you process, the more intensive that processing is on the equipment. So by maximizing what we actually need versus what we can do, we gain a possible window of opportunity that allows us to be able to efficiently increase our productivity. So with that in mind, that has been my focus over the last several months. Building a memory model that can actually sort through what is needed of all the information I collect and only provide the most relevant information to the AI system. That is, if I am discussing writing Python, then the information given should strictly be on that domain. If I am discussing the weather right after Python, then the information that's fed into the AI should have all of the Python text removed. That is, whatever I am asking the AI about should be focused on the conversation of what I am asking. The memory should be only the value of what I have given it, not everything I might have discussed within the last 5 minutes. It's a part of the system that plugs into the framework just before the AI API call is actually made. For example, you'll notice in several of my videos that oftentimes Trump is referred to as the former president because the model doesn't have the updated knowledge of what the election was. It's out of time. Having that memory interjected before the prompt means I can use any model that understands English and provide actual factual context in a real-world state. It's no longer about what the model knows in terms of history. It's about what the model knows in terms of language. And that's where my research is. I don't need my models to be up to date on history. And quite frankly, I don't see that as a viable or valid context for my workload. I need language analysis, transliteration, It works because that way it's not copyright infringing, it's not using copyrighted material, it's not being trained on copyrighted material. It's being trained on facts and public information that is unrestrictive. So having that context in play gives me an opportunity to build a layer of transparency within my framework that moves me out of the biggest problems AI has right now. And I say that in the context of not the software, but the companies behind the software in how they obtained their test data. I don't need to train my models beyond basic language and historical public information, because whatever facts I extract, they are all public. They are all free use without restriction, and that's fine. That's perfect. That does what I need. For example, whether it is writing a story based upon historical research of a collapsed society, like this channel does, the history of Rome, or the Mayan Empire, or the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1918. That's all public, free use for my research. Whereas whether or not a PhD in 2014 wrote a book, my system doesn't know that. It doesn't care because, well, it's not public. Now, there are limitations to that. Realistically, the historical context of what I don't know might be relevant in terms of my models, but from the standpoint of my work, it's subjective. I can always go get the facts I need, because facts aren't copyrightable. Facts aren't something that can be denied publicly. So by keeping my framework at that level, by being able to build as much as I can through that level, I can try to provide a series of tools that when you watch my videos, you get human history and human behavior without copyrighted content. Meaning what goes into making my video is already publicly accepted and known. My scripts, my transliterations, my historical commentary, all of that is copyrighted by my knowledge, expertise, and research as a PhD in theology. So from the standpoint of what the video comes from, it comes from public facts, public history, things you learn in school. From the standpoint of what I've produced, it's original to me. The story layout, the imaging that is still strange, and even some of the unusual quirks in the text itself, the script. But that's really the whole point, and that plays into the imaging as well in terms of my research. The computer should know that a human has 5 fingers and the head faces one direction, but it doesn't always get that information if the context window of the model is too small. Again, it goes back to how much information the model can be given versus what I should actually curate to give the model. And that has been my nemesis from the beginning. I have gotten closer to resolving it, and I'm sure you will have noticed with the more recent news articles on the website and even in the Discord server. And as more of the videos progress through the system, there are changes being made. Changes that show the new engines with better coordination of the data, of the facts, of the actual information I am presenting. That is the whole point of this. Demonstrating historical human behavior. Getting rid of the words that don't matter and showing only the behavior in a way that does matter. Something we can see throughout history of the last 8,000 to 10,000 years, removing made-up language. Because really, when you look at every single society on the planet, and it doesn't matter what that society is, the language itself is transient. It changes. Year over year, generation after generation, new words come out for old problems. A lot of it is trying to make believe that a problem doesn't exist by giving it a new word, rather than actually looking at the root human behavior that is exhibited within that pattern. The AI models that I have built and use look at those human patterns, not the words that society likes to use to define those patterns. That is the benefit of AI, the statistical probability of analysis in a way that shows from beginning to end the contextualization of human behavior, something we could actually quantify, something we can touch, something we can measure in a realistic way. The whole process comes together with one clear point. Can we really say we are building a better tomorrow? Or are we just building the failures of yesterday with different words? A failure is a failure, and it doesn't matter whether we use a 4-syllable word or a 2-syllable word to describe the failure. If it fails, it fails. That is where AI can and is quite unique in understanding history and anthropology. We can give it a lot of information, and we can then begin filtering out unrelated patterns, leaving us only with related human patterns of behavior. We can draw correlations between language, where certain words may be similar in meaning, and then we can see and apply that pattern directly to what we are observing. A prefix to our social structuralization in a way that removes everything except the one thing that really matters. Everything we do in life, no matter what we do, always starts with our behavior. Us. Not the words we use, not our grand intentions, not a bureaucracy that shapes society in one way or another, but the very root of every underlying structure we've ever built. How we behave as a species. This fundamental approach has been my biggest problem within actually analyzing news and then finding the human correlated patterns within history. Getting rid of the words and breaking down those words into emotions, into behaviors, into consequence. For example, the Roman Empire versus the Roman Republic. They have a lot in common, but as much as they have in common, they are exactly opposite. And that context isn't always easily given out or expressed as we discuss the two in relation to human behavior. Because when you remove the language and you look at the behavior, you don't see an empire versus a republic. But the same is true with the Native Americans or with the medieval Scandinavians. When you remove language and you just look at human behavior, there are so many similarities that it's clear that we're not talking about a uniformity of ideology. We're talking about a uniformity of behavioral pattern. That really is the fundamental of what I'm trying to achieve. The actual behavioral pattern of what helps us move forward. What we used for hundreds of millions of years that helped us build the modern world we have. That, I hope, is what comes out in my videos. That, I hope, is what comes out in the transcripts. Not laminating a past that is glorious because it wasn't. Survival is never glorious. It's the bottom level of the worst of the human species. It's not something we should be at. It's something we should build on and pray we never return to. But every collapsed society always ended up going down to the very basic minimal survival constraints because they forgot those critical lessons. The behaviors that built those lessons and their societies, their cultures, as they became more and more prosperous, they forgot the struggles, the difficulties, the reasons behind why they wanted to become successful as a society, why they wanted to grow and better themselves. We can't forget those struggles. We can't say history was great. There's nothing great about the bubonic plague or the Red Death or the Black Death or starvation or famine or any of the countless things our ancestors went through. What is great about them is their perseverance of survival. Throughout all of what they went through, all of their struggles, they managed to live another day. And by living another day, they took one step forward to building a better future for themselves. I hope we can continue that path and continue to build a better future for ourselves. But some of the patterns I've seen and documented with my videos leave me wondering, much like Socrates or Aristotle or countless other people within their own cultures talking about what they've seen. I have to ask the question, are we really building a better tomorrow? Or are we just building and rebuilding the failures of yesterday? Leave a comment, share your thoughts, let me know. And if you do find mistakes in the video imaging in the videos, tell me. It helps me figure out what broke, which is usually something in every single video. More importantly, take time to understand our history as a species. We are one race, and somewhere in all of that, with the divisiveness and toxic rhetoric of politics, we seem to have lost that perspective. Thank you for watching.